Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Matt Chat. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined today by my good friend, longtime friend, Executive Director, BTS Chicago, Mike Powell. I think you may have the only voice in wrestling that's arguably worse than mine, Powell. So good morning.
Definitively.
We could, like, if there was some like the Raspies or some sort of rock band, that could be us for sure.
Add Izzy Martinez to that.
Yes, yeah. He could be the lead singer. As Chris Rock would say, I'll play the tambourine. So, how are you doing this morning?
Good, real good. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
For sure. I know there's lots of stuff going on up there. Full disclosure, I have known you since Lilishawn Coleman was at Oak Park River Forest. I always tease my dad. We had the greatest junior college recruiting visit ever. We had Lilishawn and both the Dardanes down for a visit.
That was good.
And that they probably would have done pretty good in junior college if they all stuck around in sports. So, all right. Well, so I do set that as setting the table for you. Your teams were very, very successful, at least 1 year ranked number one in the country, Mythical National Championship. But it's a huge paradigm shift going from being the head coach of a high school wrestling team, albeit super successful, to being the executive director, CEO type of position of an organization. In both cases, you're managing alphas, I would assume.
Oh, yeah.
In both cases, as John Smith told me when I first started recruiting, well, David, sometimes you got to advise them. Sometimes you got to tell them what to do. So, but I am interested in what parallels you saw between running the two and what, if any, new skills you either needed to sharpen the saw or to learn to be effective in your new role.
All right, so I think there's two subjects there. One, parallels.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I was confident in this. I think it took me a while to learn it, but leadership is leadership and culture is culture. And that could be a business, a nonprofit organization, a sports program, or any other organization where you need to excite people, keep them excited, get them to buy into something bigger than themselves, move toward in a direction that you as a leader would set. I think leadership is the same. I went from leading, high school coaches and parents and kids to mostly adults, and then trickling down to a bunch of kids. But so the landscape was different. I didn't know, or I thought the landscape was different. I guess the landscape was different. I didn't know that those skills would translate as well as they did. And frankly, I wasn't very confident in it. So that's a big it was a big awakening for me. I've joined this business group called Vistage. I'm their like nonprofit charity case. It's a bunch of CEOs of huge companies, and they allowed me to join their group. So I've learned a ton from them. But one of the things I came to realize pretty quickly once I joined the group is leadership, culture is culture, and everybody's working on it, everybody's thinking about it, and it remains utmost importance. I think Kale is whatever they have going there, and it's kind of mysterious, I know, but I study it as much as I can. But man, does that seem like a really strong culture? Man, clearly incredible leadership. So, I think it transcends, those two things transcend everything. The second part of the question, I've learned, I've learned what I didn't know. I think that's my most important lesson in moving from being a wrestling coach to running an organization was, man, I've got a lot of holes. There's a lot of things that you miss out at when you're a wrestling coach. I would equate this to an athlete who comes out of being a professional wrestler at 30 years old and has never held a real job. And you and I've talked about this many times over the years. They don't have a skill set that they would have had they gone into the workforce at 22 or 23 years old and been grinding away. And so similar to that, I spent 20 years in education. And when I got out of it, I didn't have much business acumen. I didn't really know how to run an organization. In my first foray into Beat the Streets was the book Nonprofit for Dummies. And then I just asked a bunch of questions, and then I figured out what I wasn't good at, which was pretty much everything. And I found an expert in every field. We have a nonprofit consultant on our board. My first hire was Kathy Yen, who is, got, she hates it when I say this, but has degrees from 3 like world-class universities, and had been running businesses and nonprofits. So I surrounded myself with a bunch of people who've taught me, a tremendous amount. And I think how it relates to what you do and what we do in the wrestling world is, man, everybody should be running an organization. If you're a major high school wrestling coach, you're a college coach, you're running a club, you have to run a real organization. You have to run a business. And it's more important now than ever with NIL money, with high school travel, all of the things that I look back at Oak Park that I could have augmented and done much better. It all would have been related to business acumen. So
it's interesting because like I went to college and went right to work, and I own my own business at 22, and you make a lot of mistakes, but it's better to make those mistakes at 22, no wife, no kids, small mortgage. The mistakes are not as impactful on your lifestyle. And then, my dad's a great coach, but he's not the best recruiter. And then somebody said one day, they're like, you're pretty good at sales. Why don't you just do the recruiting for him? And then you realize, like you said, this is just different. Instead of talking to 55-year-olds about retirement, you're talking 18-year-olds about their future, and was pretty good at recruiting, So yeah. It is interesting. And then like the business side of it is really important. Like you started those Beat the Streets duels, and they were great. I remember you actually calling me one time. I was at the World Cup in Iowa City, and you're like, I need a team, and we're going through the rankings, and we got a team like in 9 minutes. And then when COVID hit, those have eventually become, at least in my mind, the Hall of Fame duels. And I work for them, and there's a board there, and everything's business related. Like part of it is get the 16 best teams you can. And then once you do that, everything else is business. And if you only know wrestling, if you only know the rankings, you're fairly straitjacketed is in terms of how much value you can bring. If you don't know how to do fundraising, if you don't know how to add the salt and pepper and make it a great experience, that kind of thing. So yeah, business is really important. I know you and I, we've talked for years off the air about, I'll pick your brain once in a while when you're bored or lonely, you pick mine. And, but one of the things that I'm interested in is culture, because, just to say this out loud, like you coached at a predominantly Black school, and you're not Black, and you led those young men, and it didn't feel like it was ever an issue. And they either loved you or hated you because of who you were, not because of the color of your skin. And I also hear a million people saying, trust the process, but not everybody's process is working. Not everybody's winning. Not everybody's creating highly successful events or making a lot of money. So what was your culture at Oak Park, and how much did it transition to BTS?
So I think culture is rooted in relationships, deep and meaningful relationships. And then you add consistency to that and a clear vision, right? And then it's somebody who can sell that vision, and you start building that family atmosphere. And the family, we called it the Husky Wrestling family at Oak Park. And it was a very prideful group, but it took a while to build them. And there's a lot of, my trilogy is trust, love, and truth. There's a lot of trust to be built, and then there's a lot of love to be spread around. But I think our probably the biggest thing for me was there were no chinks in the armor. When you're pushing a kid, when you're holding the kid's feet to the fire, when you're asking more for the parents than they've ever given, when you're asking them to give up their winter, holiday, the vacation, or trust me with your child. I once asked a family whose name you would recognize to give their child up for at the end of the season to get them out of a certain situation and move them into a different home. To be able to do stuff like that, it's like years and years of being there all the time, but especially in crisis. So when things get difficult, we really rallied and we really stepped up. And I think that cultural piece is, you can talk about it within the wrestling room, and it's a little bit different within the wrestling room. But are we all moving toward the same vision? And do these people feel like they are really family? And do they feel like they're really a meaningful part of the organization? And that was super important for me. It was really important. Kathy Yen's son he wrestled in the state finals for us because he walked out as a captain, but he never started. He was a JV conference champion. He was a very good high school wrestler. He was on the #1 team in the country and never started for us, but he was a super meaningful part. It was as important that he felt meaningful as Isaiah White did. And so they got different things because they needed different things. But Chris was given a job. Chris Yen he had an important and significant role, and the goal was every guy that walked in the door that was willing to really, invest in our program got invested in. And at Beat the Streets now we call that reciprocal investment. The more you give, the more you get. The more you give, the more we give, and the more we're going to help you get to where you want to be. We've since come up with this concept of being a life champion. But that was me just putting a name on what we did at Oak Park. If you're willing to build yourself and you're willing to sacrifice for your team, you get to be part of this very meaningful group that you're going to grow in, that is going to love you, that is going to push you. And I just had lunch with Adam Lemke Bell, who played football at Northwestern, was a heavyweight. I think he graduated 2016, and he was one of the favorites to win state. Broke the growth plate in his foot and already committed to Northwestern, so he didn't wrestle at the end of the year. We think he may have been in the state finals or won it. So he was a very good high school wrestler. But we went out, we talked about culture, and I said, what was meaningful to you? I mean, he didn't talk about wrestling. He talked about how he felt. He talked about how, and then we talked about expectations, and we talked about consistency and structure, and all these things were kind of put in his life at a time when he needed them. And he realized, I'm going to cling to this. I'm going to buy into this. So as fast forward several years later, almost 10 years later now, we've done that on a much bigger scale at Beat the Streets. But I think it starts with our admin team all being on the same page. We live our values. Our values are accountability, gratitude, grit, integrity, and excellence. We call them our Aggie values. We talk about those all the time. Everything we do is informed by our values. We talk about our ethos. We just had a big branding discussion. We are curt. We are to the point. We are no nonsense. This is how we write our emails. This is how we talk to our kids. This is how we talk to our donors. We are very, so everybody's bought in. And everybody sees the vision. Everybody knows we're going to get there, and it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when you mention all that reminds me of my life is, I think, I got to be on both sides of it, and as an athlete and as a coach, just like yourself. And I think as an athlete, you remember more about how people made you feel than necessarily like a specific match. I think most of us remember all the matches we lost and a few of the matches we won, assuming you were pretty good and won more than you lost. And I was telling this story to somebody the other day, in the 4th grade, I tried wrestling for the first time. And like everybody, I wasn't very good at it, but I didn't train and I didn't practice. And my dad just said, look, you didn't deserve to win. Just because your last name is mine doesn't mean you deserve to win. If you want to train, I'll coach you. But if you don't want to practice, we're not doing this again. This is embarrassing. And I didn't wrestle for 3 years. And the thing that I tell people that I didn't realize at the time, but I respect my father so much for this now, is he didn't treat me any different. He was still out hitting tennis balls in the air with a racquetball racket because I thought I was going to be a baseball player, still playing tag football with me. And wrestling, I'm sure it bothered him that I wasn't going to wrestle.
Yeah.
And he never treated me any differently. And then in the 7th grade, I wanted to wrestle. And this is what he said. He said this to me twice in my life. He said this, and then when I was going to go fight in the jiu-jitsu worlds, he goes, I don't care if you want to compete. I care if you want to train. And I was like, when I was 36, that made all the sense in the world. When I was 12, I just said, whatever you say, I'll do.
Yeah.
So And I've seen you with your guys. I know a lot of your guys. At least one of your guys was one of my guys, and they speak to that culture. You mentioned people moving in. I had a kid one year that was 125 pounds on his very lightest day ever. And, he basically lived with me the last month of the season because he was, driving back and forth. And my wife at the time thought we had adopted somebody. And, but people remember that. Or they remember if you're not there for them, conversely. You've been there for me. Hopefully I've been there for you. And if you can pick up the phone and call somebody, you might not even remember the what. You just remember like that guy picked up the phone and made it happen for me. So
I think that's a big deal when you're trying to build culture. And I think in the wrestling program, I would say in the business world, at Beat the Streets, we push our employees. We expect our employees to push our kids. We expect everybody to get better all the time and be fighting to get better all the time. I just had a conversation with our enrichment coordinator, Layla Cleofi, and she said, I need you to praise me. I don't praise myself. I'm super hard on myself. But what I realize is I need to hear it once in a while. And I said, okay, it's also not my nature. My nature is, okay, we got that one done. What's the next thing?
Yeah.
And so we have this kind of like constantly just living out of your comfort zone. This like ethos, that is rooted in culture. And so when you're going to do that, when you're constantly pushing people out of their comfort zone, they have to love you. They have to know you love them. Like that is it's a really big piece because they will turn back at you and they will look for weaknesses in your game. Is this guy, does he have integrity? Is he doing the things that he asked me to do? Are the expectations universal? Are they clear? And all these things. And is there somebody going to follow up? And so what happens is, okay, I'm part of this group. And now I feel this pressure by the group to get better. And when I don't want to get better and when I don't want to improve, I still have to improve. And that Adam, I said, I think what you remember most is how much you grew during the time, right?
Yeah.
He said, absolutely. And I said, so that's a strong culture. You felt loved and you felt like your family was helping you become a better human. And he said, that's right. So I think that's what we're trying to do. I think we are doing it at Beat the Streets.
You certainly are. And you don't need to Joe humble that part. I mean, if you don't think you're doing it, no one's going to think you're doing it. I mean, it's what it is, right?
Important to us, I should say.
Yeah. There's this phrase going around. It says the magic you are looking for is in the work you're avoiding. It's, I've seen it a lot on socials and, people, and I think that's it. I also like the young lady or woman you said that said, I need to be praised. Like, it's funny, like some people are carrot people and some people are whip people. And I think most of us are predominantly one, but every once in a while we're the other.
Mm-hmm.
And, like Leroy Smith is my boss at the Hall of Fame. And when we did a podcast, I thanked him. And he basically said, like, you're a guy we pull back. We don't have to push forward very often. But there's once in a while where you get discouraged. And, Leroy's like a really cool big brother, grandfather figure where he'll kind of hype you up. And the guy was a really good wrestler. And then you want to go run through a wall for him.
Yep.
So
I think that's an important thing, and being able to read your people and know who needs what.
Yes.
And so Pat Martinez, who's our wrestling coordinator on the wrestling side, the equivalent to Layla, he's a different animal. He's a world-class wrestler, and he just goes.
Right.
So
even those guys like to hear praise.
Layla.
Yeah.
What's that?
Even those guys like to hear praise once in a while, though.
Yeah, and I think in the right way. And I when I do praise, I try to be sincere about it and specific.
Yeah, I think, specificity is really important. Like, great job on this task or great job on accomplishing that. Yeah. So I kind of fell into Beat the Streets just more or less because I trusted you. You hear the concept and certainly, and I coached my share of junior college doesn't have a lot of well-to-do kids wrestling in it over the years. It's very wrestling's blue collar, and junior college is probably on the bluest collar extreme of things.
Yeah.
So, but also it's just the fact, like, I know if I help you raise money that it's not going overhead, like it's going to go to the right spot.
Right.
But So what is that money doing? Like what specific things Beat the Streets or are Beat the Streets doing that are impacting kids' lives?
Well, so I mean, I can answer that in 45 minutes or 5 minutes. I'll try to do 5 minutes, but
It depends on what else you want to talk about. The hour is yours. You can make my job really easy, and I'll just say thank you for watching.
So I will say about 80% of our money goes toward programming, and that's an important thing in the nonprofit world. How much of your money goes directly toward kids, or the direct service of kids, is an important thing.
Right.
I don't take a salary. I'm married well. I'm really lucky, but I work full time and don't take a salary, so that helps our numbers. But we pay our employees well, but we're going to serve well over 3,000 kids this year. And we're doing two things simultaneously. And in the nonprofit world, particularly in the youth-based sports nonprofit world, this is very unique. So most youth-based sports nonprofits either serve a couple thousand, 1,000 kids, 800 kids, a couple thousand kids, and they go running after school, or they throw out the soccer ball after school, and it's kind of AYSO soccer or recreational sports. So if you have a larger group, most of them are recreational sports. And then you have these smaller groups that are, maybe take a boxing gym that has 30 or 40 kids, but it's very heavily, a lot of contact hours, a lot of maybe enrichment to supplement boxing, et cetera, et cetera. We do both. And the reason for that is we're going to be in 34 locations, 32 of this year. 32 will be in Chicago. We're the only outside group that runs a league for Chicago elementary school programs. So they have a intramural league called SCORE. We went to them and said, hey, if we pay for most of this and organize it, can we run a league? And we've built it from 4 teams to, I think we'll have 27 this year. So we think we'll have about 500 kids in that league this year. So that's good. Things are happening in terms of like us building this large group of kids. And those are not heavy touch kids. So those are kids. I'm sorry, I probably phrased that wrong.
No, not a safe word. Those are people that don't need a ton of ongoing management, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and they're not. It's the programming is not heavy and intense in terms of how much time we're putting into them. The SCORE program is 6 weeks. It is literally made to be a feeder program for Chicago Public School high school programs and for us. So from there, we pull kids into higher and higher programming. We actually have created what we call a self-selecting filter. The more you invest in you, the more we invest in you. So that reciprocal piece is really important. We give opportunities to all these kids that maybe just joined a summer camp or just joined the SCORE program to filter into higher and higher programming. And then we have about 600 of those 3,000 kids that are involved with our enrichment programming. And of that, we have about 250 that in what we call our high impact group. These are kids that we're very, very involved with year round. They do both wrestling and enrichment. And enrichment might be our Life Champions Academy, who just met this Sunday. Since we're in the postseason, we brought in a sports psychologist from Wrestling Mindset. And then we did a 2-hour breathing and yoga session or visualization session. And, the kids don't need a hard practice right now, but that Life Champions Academy is kind of tailored toward what they need at the time. In the off season, we focus more on soft skills, hard skills, financial literacy, things like that. But that group meets 10 Sundays for 5 hours a Sunday a year. You have to apply to it. You have to write an essay. You have to have references. We have a STEAM summer camp. So STEAM is STEM. And you come for your parents can drop you off an hour ahead of time if they have to go to work. You have classroom stuff. These kids are like studying bridges, then building bridges, then going on the bridge tour of Chicago. They're doing really cool things. They did a mural last year. They read every day. They journal every day. They talk about their values. So there's 3 hours of classroom, then they eat lunch, and then there's 3 hours of wrestling, and then they can stay another hour in case for parents to come pick them up, or we pick them up and drop them off. So we have a classroom in our facility. We have a $2 million facility on the south side of Chicago.
Is that where the duels were? Is that the facility we're talking about?
No, the huge, really nice facility that's owned by Bedford Park. It's across the street from the south side of the city. So that's where we host our events, but that's about a mile from our facility.
Okay.
So anyways, we have a tutoring classroom after school. Adam Lemke Bell actually runs that class. Kids' grades get checked. They do their work there. They're tutored there. If they don't have anything to do, they're giving projects to do. So they're doing a lot of, just a lot of off the mat stuff. So, and then we do countless other things with these 250 kids. From those 250 kids, we have 100 of those kids, just under 100 is our number right now, of what we call 360 kids. And these are kids who, like, we know their mom's middle name. We're dealing with domestic violence issues. We're dealing with food insecurity issues. We're dealing with school absentee issues. There's some heavy stuff there. Also some not so heavy stuff. We just helped a kid get into Duke. And so, we had a kid get into Duke, and we just had a kid who just won the city get into Morgan State. He'll be pretty cool. So I think he'll wrestle there. But those are 360 kids. So we do the really, really intense programming as well. 360 implies 360 degrees around their life, 360 degrees a year. And so we're in that kind of rare space where we do the real high impact, but we're also, and this will speak to the wrestling community, we're trying to build wrestling. I grew up hearing about, give back to the sport. How do we grow the sport? How do we do this? And the answer is, there's 2.7 million people in Chicago proper. We're trying to build, not trying, we have built an ecosystem, a self-sustaining ecosystem of wrestlers breeding wrestlers. And we're in the first generation right now, but we have 3,000 of those kids. And the goal is, 10 years from now to have that group be 10,000 kids. And so pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. I this has nothing to do with you, but one of my pet peeves is people post, I want to give back to the sport, and then here's what I'm charging to do something. That's fine, but you're making a living. You're not giving back to the sport.
I think maybe you're doing both simultaneously. And we do live in a world where, every baseball, volleyball, soccer, you name the sport, football, they're all becoming elite, and you have to pay to play. And you need a mom with a minivan and $1,500 to give Izzy. She packs your dinner for you. She makes sure you do your homework on the way there. She drives you 45 minutes. She waits for you. Then she drives you home. That's the nature of high quality wrestling programming now, just like it is all other sport. I hate it. I don't hold it against Izzy. Izzy's learned to be successful in the system, and he's producing great, and his kids are going to great schools, and there's really good things.
Well, the other part of that, which is positive, is as these higher level coaches are coaching younger level kids, our age group teams, and we're on a USA Wrestling podcast, our age group teams are doing better and better. And like, we'll eventually get to like a Morgan Turner, but that's a primary example. And you had a ton of kids that were winning Fargo and things like that. Kamal Bay is one of your guys. He's still out there doing it, but he's at a senior level now, just based on literally what year he was born. But we're seeing more U15, U17, U20 do extremely well. And those people are being coached by like the Izzies, the Askrens, the Strit Matters, the people all over the country. If I start, I won't name everybody, so I apologize. The Hardell Moores of the world that are teaching these kids. Like I was always blessed because I had a college coach as a dad. Yeah. And, but like, that's unique. That was unique. Now, like, you can go get a guy who knew what Ron Mirikitani knew, and you got to pay him and you can get him.
It applies to the landscape of Beat the Streets because, like everything else, all the resources have left the poor neighborhoods. That system that you're talking about is really healthy to produce the next Kyle Dake, the next Kyle Snyder. But it is very unhealthy for growing the sport, for making the sport accessible, what I call geographically and financially accessible, right? And so, and that and disinvestment in urban areas in general has left this, what I refer to, what a food desert is.
Yeah.
Kids in the hood have really a hard time accessing quality food. They're buying most of their food from the corner shop or the gas station. And, but organic vegetables is not in question, right? So there are sports deserts, and that that's what we're trying to combat. So Beat the Streets is literally the antithesis of what we just described. And it's not, again, I don't hold anything against.
No, neither one are good or bad, or neither one are bad. They're both good, but they're certainly different.
They're both necessary. And that's where me getting to come on your podcast and say this is, it's important that the wrestling community hears this. There is less money now for Beat the Streets than there ever has been. NIL has changed the game, right? The RTCs have changed the game. These kind of like you said, these college coaches have to be CEOs. They have to run a full organization. They need to raise money for a director of operations. There's all these things that they need to do. That money goes to them first, and we kind of get the trickle down from that. So just kind of building awareness about what we're doing. I hope we produce the next Kamal Bay out of Beat the Street Chicago. But if we don't, we just want that kid to get into Morgan State and have a better life than he otherwise would have.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that in spades right now. Our kids' lives, the stories coming out of Beat the Streets right now are just incredible.
Yeah. Like for me, so like a couple weeks ago, I did a play-by-play for a friend of mine. It was a high school meet, and it was a good meet in Missouri, Class 1, number 1, Class 2, number 1. I mean, it's not what we ran, and it's not Montini versus Bergen. It's not, Oak Park versus Broken Arrow, but it's good wrestling.
Yeah.
And I'm so blessed because I'm at these high level events, right? And I'm on the podcast, I'm talking about, like this week, we'll talk about what happened between Kayla Miracle and Macy Kilty, not what happened between St. Michael's and St. Pius in Kansas City, Missouri.
Right.
And so I think you unintentionally kind of become elitist, not like you just, because it's where your energy is supposed to be focused to do what you're supposed to talk about. And there were 3 JV matches on that duel. And so we commentated them, my friend and I, and one kid got a pin, and his mom, his dad, his sister are going crazy. And I'm not mocking that. What I'm saying is it reminded me. And one of the reasons why I like going to Beat the Streets, like doing the commentary at the duels, going to the gala, is because it resets me. It reminds me, like, look, at the root of all this, we all know each other because we love this sport.
Yeah.
And we were all various degrees of good at it. But all this sport all helped us. And, I made the comment on the air and I got a bunch of text about it. Like, I was like, this is awesome. This kid's family's going crazy. And I'm like, this kid might be the toughest kid in the room because he's probably getting his teeth kicked in every day because he's on the JV. Not the best kid in the room, clearly, or he'd be on the varsity, but he might be one of the toughest kids. And then you see this a lot, and this. Some of the people that donate the most money back to wrestling, I would say the majority of people that donate the most money back to wrestling were not great at wrestling.
Right. They recognize what wrestling did for them.
Yes.
The people that they saw in the community. And I think I appreciate what you just said. That JV kid, I'm really happy for him. But
yeah.
You came to the duels. We wrestled in New York in the boys finals.
Yeah.
And the 2 guys that finished, Devontae and a young man named Eric Harris, right? They won back-to-back just matches. Devontae said to me, I'm going to start crying saying this, but he came up to me, came up to Mike Boyd, he came up to Patrick Martinez, and he said, this is the greatest moment of my life.
Yeah.
He has grown up in foster care. That half an hour later, we got called by his case manager and said his foster care parent has been arrested for nefarious things. We need you to go empty his house out right now. And we said, no, we're taking him on a boat. Like, absolutely not. Yeah. This kid's having the greatest day of his life. So we talked her into helping us navigate that situation. That's what was behind there. So this sport of wrestling and this organization and this opportunity and the resources that are behind all of them created this moment for this kid. And he will remember that. And we're still very close to him. We just had, Pat and I just had lunch with him. We will be involved and invested with this kid. And wrestling is doing for Devontae exactly what it was supposed to. Eric Harris called the day before the camp started and said, I have to babysit my baby brother. My mom is a working mom. It's a single parent. I've got to stay home and babysit my baby brother. So we had to hire a babysitter for him so that he could come there. He wins the national Beat the Streets national championship on behalf of Chicago. And that's one of the greatest moments in his life. And it wouldn't have happened without this organ, And so you think about those 2 kids, just those 2 kids, not the other, 13,000 that the Beat the Streets are serving around the country. But how profound of a moment that was, and how great that it is that they get to share that. And it doesn't exist without this nonprofit structure and people and really the resources that make it possible.
Well, one of the things I noticed up there And shout out to our guy, Matt Collum. He did the play-by-play with me, head coach Loyola High School, Masters, old guy, Masters world champion. We were doing the commentary, but I said to him off the air, I go, you know what I love? He goes, what? I go, whichever part of the country these guys are from, they're wearing their swag. Like, I'm beat the street Chicago. I'm beat the streets Baltimore. I'm beat the streets New York, whatever the case may be. And it wasn't like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm beat the street Chicago. You know, it's like, you know, say it with your chest kind of thing, right? And like, that goes back to culture, right? Like, you have to build something that people are proud of. And when you're at the head of that, like, it's a blessing for me. Like, we run the event, the Border Brawl, and we donate money. I can't tell you how many kids, their social media profile picture is them from Border Brawl. Yeah. And then, like, there's show some picture of what you accomplished in 23, and it's kids flexing in his match. And, you know, and it's not the world championship, right? But it's a good match, just like your match was a good match. And one of the things that I loved, and you might not, you probably loved it, I know you will not, but you had to manage it, was it got super chippy up there.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And I was like, this is awesome, because it means they cared, right?
It was a couple of fierce duels, LA and New York, and then and then the girls. We actually would have made the finals, but we had a girl punch another girl, and so, you know, that girl's forever. You know, she's working on beating the streets as we speak. But it was a great. You know, our board president came to me afterwards. We had just hired Sammy Barrientos as our female head coach. And Sammy spent 10 minutes with this girl, just face to face afterwards, just running through all of the emotions, all of the lessons. And Paul Carberry, our board president, was stood about 10 feet away and just watched the whole time. And he came to me and he said, you got the right woman there. She's a special coach. What I just saw her do is go from like 1,000,000 miles an hour down to 0, down to lessons learned, to I love you, to we're going to do this together. And it was like, that's what wrestling is all about. That's what sport is all about. I really want to see Kyle Dake win the world championships, but I am involved with this sport because that's what wrestling did for me. I had a coach who did that for me. You know, I had a community that helped me with that. And the growth that I personally experienced as a troubled kid, you know, in growing up into becoming a man, that was life-changing for me. And so,
and that young lady will remember that coach, like we talked about earlier, for how she made her feel, for holding her accountable, but for not being down on her, for saying, I'm here for you, and not giving up on her, and not putting unnecessary blame on her. And all those things matter. And there's a time and a place, and you either get it done or you don't.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember I was coaching a guy in an MMA fight, and it was like a big fight. It was televised. It was on PFL, and like Randy was commentating, and he got knocked out. And it was kind of his last run, right, at the big time. And we went in the back, and I mean, I coached this guy back when he was in high school. I could beat him. Like, now he'd kill me. And I just held him. And the other coach left. I mean, like, left.
Yeah.
And we never talked about it. But like the next time I saw him, he just said, I'll always remember that. And, you know, like,
and the city kids, you know, our kids, some of whom, Devontae, grew up without that at home. And, you know, I think that's, at least my hope is to, when being on your podcast, is to convey that message. It's super important. And doing that work, that's, in my mind, giving back to the sport, right? And that's
and speaking of giving it back to the sport, female wrestling, women's wrestling, huge growth numbers, sanctioned in states. Like, it might be the only thing that Missouri was ahead of Iowa on in terms of wrestling. And, you know, but like Missouri has now got 2 classes. The number of girls all over the country is blowing up.
Yeah.
And I think you guys are like between 20 and 25% girls now at BTS Chicago, give or take. And, you know, I'm assuming when you guys first started, you were almost exclusively boys. So how has that, I guess, meandered? How has that just sort of evolved into this? And what do you see as the benefits of coaching these kids alongside each other?
Well, I think it's tremendous for the girls, but let me go back to the original question. I think I'm about to be 48 tomorrow, as a matter of fact. As an old head in the game now, there was a time where I was resentful of the girls that would come out from my high school team, and I'm happy to say that I did a grad school project on Title IX, and my position at the time was, what you heard all the other wrestling people say. And then about a year after I wrote that paper, maybe even less, I heard an interview with Bobby Douglas. And Bobby Douglas said, "I don't care what your position is. The most important thing we can do for the health of our sport is add women's wrestling." And this guy this is probably 2002 or 2003, maybe 2004, right? He was so progressive in terms of his viewpoint and so visionary that I was like, wait a second. That makes perfect sense. We talk about the health of wrestling. It doesn't have a female counterpart. That's a major issue. So just take all emotion and logic and morals out of it, right? My position drastically personally changed then. And then as we welcome more and more, fast forward 3 years later, we had a girl come on our senior trip with us. And this is backpacking in Glacier National Park, like backcountry. We're like, vulnerability out the wahoo. We're just loving each other and being there for each other. And to have a female, and her name was Nikki Valentini, who was just, way ahead of her time. To have her there was very meaningful for me. And my viewpoint changed, and I saw the value it brought to Nikki. And then, you fast forward all these years later and all these other examples. We have made it a major, very important thing for us at Beat the Streets. I think we're the largest wrestling club in the USA Wrestling Club in the United States. I'm fairly certain we're the largest girls wrestling club in the United States. You're talking about 500 plus girls. And that's a really important thing for us. And it's something that we wear on our chest very proudly. But creating real equality there, having a female coach, having separate practice, we've been, I think, cutting edge ahead of our time. And the result is this really incredible culture. So Sammy Barrientos, our head female coach, is she's a phenomenal leader, but these girls are really, really incredible. And we have girls from every walk of life, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, neighborhoods. Before Monica left for Augustana, we have a girl who's on a full I think she's actually getting paid to go to Augustana. She was a number 2 in her class. She's a star wrestler, 3-time All-Stater for us. I walk into the facility. This is August, right before Monica is going to Augustana. And there's balloons everywhere and there's a cake. And I said, "What's going on here?" And Monica and all the other girls said, "We're having a surprise birthday party for Mia." Monica is from the West Side, black girl. Mia is a immigrant from Mexico, from the North Side, completely different backgrounds. Mia's whole family is there. All of these girls are there from all these different backgrounds. And I thought to myself, man, this is like the world's most beautiful thing. This is exactly this is the best of Chicago. And the culture was so strong that they had the party at our facility. I don't think they asked anyone. They just did it.
Just showed up. Yeah.
Monica just came, took over the class. They might have asked somebody, but I didn't know about it. So it was just, and it's, you look at these girls, and a lot of them wouldn't otherwise have belonged to they're not the popular, they're not the country club girl. A lot of them were looking for something to belong to. Maybe they were more rough and more tumble than the other girls. Maybe there's, so there's all these other reasons that they might be looking for something. And I'm looking at maybe 16 girls that were at this party, and all of them needed a home. All of them needed a belonging or an outlet. All of them needed something to help them in their lives. And man, they need it just like the boys need it.
Yeah.
And,
we talk on the podcast that the lessons you learn from wrestling are not gender specific, right? Like
absolutely.
Accountability, teamwork, working hard, dealing with failure, dealing with losing with winning with, humility, losing with grace. I mean, that doesn't matter like if you're a man or a woman, boy or a girl.
Right.
it reminds me the stuff about like, and I appreciate, I mean, I've never known you to be anything less than completely honest and forthright, but like the paper you talked about, people always ask me like, what's your favorite podcast you've ever done? And I say probably the hardest one that I ever did, and probably the one that the person that had the most impact on wrestling ever was Art Martori. And, you know, I mean, I've been blessed. I've had John Smith, Kenny Monday, Kendall Cross, you know, I mean, it's great. Like if I look back at who I talked to, like, I'm like, well, at least like I'm not important, but I know a lot of important people are in my cell phone. And, but Art Martori talked about when they were first trying to promote women's wrestling, and I'm talking about first, that he and Trisha Saunders were sitting in the bleachers of a tournament and just making up weight classes just based on kind of how they thought women's weights were spread out.
Yeah.
And I you know, like I try to post one positive thing on my socials every day. And like one of the ones I posted in the last week or two is just because we've always done something this way doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way.
That was it.
And yeah, and that's what you got when you go, you're cutting it. Like you can't be afraid to fail. And somebody said something to me like about failure, like failure's not failing. Failing is just trying something new and not being good at it right away. And like the best analogy I ever heard was driving. Because like the first time you try to drive, you probably stink at it. And you don't go back home and go, well, I guess I just won't drive for the next 60 years. Like I got to figure it out, you know? And like, I can't just get a bus pass for the rest of my life. Like I got to figure out how to do this. And I think if you applied that to a lot of other things in life, it would probably be really meaningful. So,
I got the most humbling compliment I think I've ever had in my professional life from a board member recently who I really respect. And she said, I've been with you since the beginning and I have seen you grow and evolve and you know, just countless times. And every time I think we can't do this or you can't do this, you find the right people, you learn from them. And I was like, you know, oh my gosh, do I have a growth mindset? Like I've been telling kids they had to have a growth mindset all these years. I was like, oh my God, you know, like, and I'm not a guy that I don't take compliments well. And I don't say, you know, I got a lot, you know, I'm just very hard on myself, but I think that's the number. I think that's the most important thing. Are you evolving? Are you changing? Are you getting better? And you look at Askren and what he's doing with this club right now, and you look at Kale and, you know, that's what those guys do. And that, you know, can you be self-effacing enough, humble enough, you know, and I would say tough enough to, you know, constantly fail.
Yeah, I was with the Oklahoma State people this weekend and they talked about what they've changed this year. And it's been different than the last 2 years.
Man, they're my biggest surprise.
Yeah.
They just I'm like, who is this kid? You know, who is this kid? Yeah. So they're doing something over there.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Like it's interesting, you know, and I think that'd be hard, right? If you were like, I don't think either one of us can comprehend like how successful John Smith was. Like if we were that good in wrestling, like people go, if I was John Smith, I'd do this. Like, well, if you were John Smith, you probably wouldn't be talking to me about this. You know, like
John Smith, you'd have a move named after you or several.
Yeah, exactly. Like you basically be the unofficial mayor of Stillwater. And so, yeah, it's just, I think like people like think they can put their mindset on somebody that has a mental fortitude to do something that I'm sure he had some physical talent. Like you know, but like you don't get lucky 6 times. Like that doesn't happen.
Right.
You know, so like there's something to that. So with the time left, like let's talk a little bit about NIL, RTC. I don't even know, like, because I feel like those are totally separate things, but maybe they're not. Like, I feel like you guys are at the grassroots. I feel like, you know, like we mentioned, Oklahoma State, Penn State, Iowa, these teams are all in the portal and getting kids and you know, and college at all levels has almost become pay for play. You know, one of the dumbest statements I ever heard was somebody goes, the portal is just for a bunch of backups. And then if you look at how many Heisman Trophy winners, just that one statistic, over 50% of Heisman Trophy winners out of the last 7 years were in the portal and won it at another school. You're like, stop. Like, it's not for backups.
Right.
How does it affect what you guys are doing?
I think, well, I think I alluded to this before, but if there's a pot of wrestling money, more and more of it is going toward that now than ever before.
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-paying guys. I don't really have a viewpoint on that. What I know is it's harder for Beat the Streets Cleveland to source funders that are from the wrestling community when Tom Ryan is doing as good a job as he's doing fundraising. So if there's 10 units that is spread out, first the RTCs took a bigger chunk than ever before. Now you add the NIL, which is RTC times, 10, right? And so we're up against, as the little guys, that get the grassroots efforts, we're up against something pretty serious now. And there's less and less resources for us. Now, that said, Beat the Street Chicago is not a wrestling organization. We use wrestling as our vehicle. We are a youth development organization, and it is, if you read our impact report, that's pretty clear. And we do a lot of off the mat enrichment, and our goal is to improve lives. So our goal right now is to convince the non-wrestling world, because really there's just so many art mortories, and a lot of their money are going to go toward helping Kyle Dake be to Kyle Dake, and we're okay with that. But our goal now, our viewpoint now is we've got to go out and convince people that we are far more than a wrestling club, that we're a youth development organization, and that if you care about the youth of Chicago, investing in us is there's a big payoff there because we're doing really good work. So we're trying to change the narrative at Beat the Streets, and that goes for all the Beat the Streets. With this, it's a constant, area of discussion, how we're positioning ourselves and that type of stuff. All that said, you and I know this, even if other people don't know this, wrestling is the world's greatest vehicle for self-improvement. If we did no wrestling, off the mat enrichment, kids' lives would still get better because of the nature of our sport. So balancing those two things is really difficult right now. I shouldn't say really difficult. It's a great challenge for us. And we're meeting that challenge, and we're stepping it up. We have a 14-page impact report. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's an amazing document telling this incredible story of the journey of what we did in the last year and how many kids we served and what kind of program they were and how their lives benefited. So
I know a guy who's an advisory board member, so he'll probably get in his email soon enough. So
it was in my signature until our gala. Can I do a gala plug?
No, I'm going to get there. Trust me. I'm going to talk about it, but I want to talk about what you just said. I think what I would humbly say is this. I think you're promoting something altogether different, right? Like I tell people the money that was going to RTC is now just going to the athletes, because it used to be you couldn't pay the athletes directly. So okay, I'm going to pay so-and-so to be this athlete that stays. And then because he stays, this blue chip recruit wants to come here. Now I can just give the money to the blue chip recruit, even though I didn't give the money to the blue chip recruit. And I somehow didn't tell him that this car dealer wants to give him the money. Somehow that all magically happened. Right. And people that are only listening to this, I'm waving my hands very sarcastically, but that's the reality of it. Right. And it's happening everywhere. So there's no one school, no one place. It is what it is. I'm a capitalist. And so you have to be a capitalist all the way. And I think a lot of people are wrestling are capitalists when they compare themselves to field hockey, and then they become socialists when they compare themselves to football. And it's hypocritical. You can't ask for this money and then not want anybody else to take your money. It's literally hypocrisy.
Right.
But I think and I know you get this, but I will say this out loud to people that if they're giving money away, like I said this about, and I'll say this about Nittany Lion Wrestling Club because they've done a great job and because they're winning all the national titles. If somebody donates $10,000 to the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club and you ask them, would that $10,000 impact how many guys make the Olympic team or impact the percentage chance of Penn State winning nationals? Over 51% of those people would say winning NCAAs. Okay, that's reality. Yeah. And now there's not only can Nittany Lion Wrestling Club be a place, but now you can, be an NIL person. Okay, so that's the case. I think the people that appreciate the JV wrestler story, those are the people that are going to be giving to BTS or other things like that, because they understand, listen, this is about little Johnny, especially in your guys' organization. that was in foster care, and people wanted his house cleaned out, and he told you this was the most impactful day of his life, and maybe he was going to make some bad decisions, and now he feels like he's a part of something, and now he's not going to make those bad decisions. And then he's on a boat with these same kids they just duked it out with, and they're taking pictures together, and they're dancing, and they're having perfectly lovely PG fun, but they're having a great time.
Yep.
And they are, like I had Colin go with me, and I'm like, you got to go. Like it's a different energy. It's not what you're used to.
The boat was amazing, right?
Yeah, but I knew
what a community. What an incredible.
And everybody just getting along and stuff like that.
So I would put it like this: one is to win in wrestling, and one is to make the world a better place. And both are good.
Yes.
But those two things are very different. It's the same sport, but they're very different in terms of where your investment goes.
And the definitions of success are different in both, right? Like,
yes.
Your definition of success is for these kids to be like the first person to graduate from high school from their family, first person to graduate from college from their family, the first, to be self-sufficient, to maybe go away to school and not come back until they're settled, and then can come back and support. And these other ones are like, can you beat the Russian? And
can you continue to beat Iowa? Right.
Yeah, right. Or like, but like, if you're given to USA Wrestling, it's can we have age group world champions and stuff like that. All right. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to talk about the gala because I'm blessed to get to go. And I enjoy it. Like I said, there's some people there that I know, and I want to say this the right way. And because I had to learn this skill as a financial advisor, you're a good storyteller. And what good storytellers realize are the details matter and humor matters. Like you told this story about the kids going to stay at a Holiday Inn, and it was the first time they hadn't eaten hydrogenated eggs. And like that line is really low key, well done, because it's not just like they got to eat real eggs. That's not as funny. It's like, there's these things, but the gala raises an inordinate amount of money in one night. It's highly successful. It's like anything. Somebody says, well, they raised X amount of dollars in 4 hours. Like, well, no, they raised this amount of money in 11 and a half months, and then it all just came in 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's like for us with Border Brawl. Like, it's like, it isn't like I just show up and these kids magically show up and wrestle each other in the uniforms and the referees and everything else. And mine's a much smaller scale, but I also have a lot less help. But so the gala, and again, it's moved this year. Okay. So I got that. So why don't you tell people about it? And then we'll talk about how people get help.
So we're at the top of Navy Pier now, all the way out on the lake. It is one of the most remarkable places in Chicago with the best view of the city, both north and south. It's an amazing venue, and we outgrew our other venue. We loved partnering with them. It was a great venue, but we were at capacity last year, and so our goal is to add 200 more people and 200,000 more this year. So our goal is 600 people and 600,000 this year. What I will say to anybody who would be interested in coming is there's no rubber chicken. You're not sitting at a bunch of tables with, it is a party. Like you are fully, you were handed a drink as you walk in the door. Everybody's there in a great mood. The kids are there. The kids greet you as you walk in. Our kids are really good at this. They dress up for it. It's a big day for their year. We take them out for pizza afterwards, but we talk to them about approaching people, looking them in the eye, addressing things, and we want them mixing with the guests as much as we want the guests mixing with them, because we know, access to other community and cultures is the number one thing in terms of socioeconomic growth, right? Is seeing this other world and being part of this other world and knowing you can exist in this other world and thrive. And it's super important to our kids, for our kids. But the atmosphere is very much a party. And then we have a really inspirational show, which you kind of mentioned. We do a big video. I speak. I tell a bunch of stories about the kids. There's one thing in the world I'm naturally good at, and that's talking. Everybody leaves enthused. Everybody leaves feeling very optimistic about the future of Chicago, at least for 3,000 of those kids. So,
There's one funny story, and then we'll tell people how they can help.
And it's June 1st this year.
Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, but so I was talking to Mike. I had to talk to him about something, and he goes, "Hold on, I'll be back in like 15 minutes." And in those 14 minutes, he proposed.
Oh, but Mike Boyd, yeah.
Yeah,
So he was on stage.
No, he's like, I was like, I thought he had like go get a cocktail or something, and he proposed. Like, so I mean,
Mike Boyd's our head coach. He proposed to his wife at the gala.
So Colin and Courtney come. We usually come together, and I think another buddy of mine from Kansas City, I told him to come up this year. Is it just btschicago.org? Is that how people can donate and buy tickets and all that stuff?
Yep, btschicago.org. We appreciate the investment.
Yeah, and I guess what I will say in closing, because I sometimes think a third party saying something is more valuable than the person doing it. If you guys are considering, and we understand that, money's tight, the world's tough. If you talk to some of these kids, and I coached a lot of kids that if there was a Beat the Street St. Louis would have came through the program that and my dad was a mentor to hundreds of young men over the years that he helped change their lives. But if they had had this impact at a younger level, it would have been, my dad's job would have been easier. They would have been used to the discipline. They would have been used to the tough love. They would have been used to, we put into you what you put into us. They would have been more used to somebody believing in them at an earlier age. And you see that there, like you mentioned, the kids coming up to you, they walk up to you, they shake your hand. There's a firm handshake. They look you in the eye. They're not looking down at their shoes. They're proud to be there. And I think that probably a lot of these kids didn't have anything in their life to be proud of, and it wasn't their fault. They were born into circumstances that they were not, that again, not their fault, but there wasn't a lot to be proud of. Like, I grew up easy. I grew up with two parents that are in the Hall of Fame. So like I had something to be proud of just by association. Like my job was to not screw it up. And, these people's kids, their job is to do the opposite. There is to just go create the next generation and uplift their family tradition and things like that. So it's an impressive thing. And I'll tell people that it's a good date night. Like if you want to do some of the wrestling, but you get to get dressed up, that's fun. I will be there. I told Powell I already booked my hotel at Navy Pier. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I sent you a text. I'm like, because I could never figure out where the closest hotel was there. So I'd always like stay out in the suburbs with Column or near Column and then drive in. So this will be easy. Like, I think I can walk. So it'll be a lot nicer. So btschicago.org, or if you don't remember that, just Google Beat the Street Chicago and go to the website. And there's, I'm sure, a donate now button. And I'm sure there's a gala tickets button and probably other ways. If you're in Chicago, if you want to be involved and volunteer, there's probably ways to contact the organization there as well.
We're looking for all kinds of tutors, drivers, coaches. We're looking for, we're building, forever building. We're building out 2 gyms as we speak.
You and I probably have a semi-monthly conversation about who in the world I know that should come over there. So, but that's a good thing. It means you're growing, and it means that the other side would mean that you don't have kids coming in and you need less people. That's a first world problem. Growth is a first world problem. So I will give the last sentences to you. Anything else? And I will say this: happy early birthday. And then the final word is yours.
I appreciate what you do for wrestling and your investment in our community. And I hope people can consider investing in Beat the Streets community. And we're doing great work. We're really proud of the work, and we are watching lives change right before our eyes. And it is truly amazing. Come be part of our community.
Perfect way to go out. Thank everybody for watching and listening. We will speak to you all next week.
Thanks, Dave.